Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lunch with Dodie. It's a fabulous Friday here in Silverton, and it's an autumn day for sure. Today, our guest is John Hughes with ComForCare and Aging in the Willamette Valley. So, John, tell us about your endeavors here and what's going on.
Well, I'll start with the radio show, Aging in the Willamette Valley. It airs every week for 30 minutes on KMUZ FM out of Salem. That's 88.5 and 100.7 FM. It actually airs twice during the week, at noon on Tuesday and again at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. And this show is part of my give back to the community, the mid-Willamette Valley, everybody that can get the FM broadcast or is aware of KMUZ and streams on their phone or computer or whatever. We're all getting older, or our parents are getting older, or both. But a lot of people encounter hurdles along the way. Maybe they haven't put together, estate planning, the wills and the powers of attorney and those various documents. Or maybe, they now have a health condition or something else to manage. So on the show each week, we have a guest that we talk to on some aspect of aging and or health care. So Dodie's been a guest on the show a couple of times. We've had several of the hospice agencies come on, home care, home health, assisted living, various long-term care type communities. And we've had several doctors come on, or therapists with alternative therapies, such as acupuncture. I remember when that guest was on and he asked me what I knew about acupuncture. And I said, well, you turn people into human porcupines, right? And when he finally stopped laughing, he said, no, and then explained how the process worked. So, each of these folks talks about their area of expertise, and hopefully our listeners come away with either a better understanding of something that they at least know exists, or in some cases they're finding out about different types of therapy or treatments that maybe they're not aware of. One of the doctors we had on, he sees patients about half time now, and the rest of his time is devoted to teaching other doctors that everything they were taught about pain management in medical school and what is still being taught today is wrong. You would have to listen to the show or hear one of his podcasts to understand what that means. But in a nutshell, I first encountered him at a gerontology conference at Oregon State University, and he put up a slide that had been a construction worker who stepped backwards off some scaffolding and landed in a pile of scraps. And he had this very large nail or spike, if you will, through his boot and through his foot. And of course, he asked everybody, okay, you think this person's in pain? Well, the whole room had basically gasped when he put up the slide. After they had knocked the gentleman out at the emergency room and were able to cut his boot off and open his sock up, you could see the nail went between his big toe and the other toe, and there was not so much as a scrape on the skin. But he again asked us, do you think he was in pain? And the answer was yes. And he said, throughout most of his career, like so many doctors do, they would have sent them home with a prescription for oxycodone or something similar, one of those opioid drugs, and that was the end of what they would think. And he said, we now have an opioid crisis. And he says, I finally came to the realization that even though this is kind of an extreme case, there are many cases that maybe a different type of treatment should be used. Because as he put it, the pain started with this guy's eyeballs, that it saw that giant nail, sent the message to his brain, which immediately thought pain and went into protective mode, and instantly he felt pain in his foot, even though the foot wasn't hurt. So, a lot of the guests we have on are talking about different areas of healthcare or aging and stuff. And I just want to be a resource so people can learn about things they don't know about or get better educated. And I think a lot of our listeners who do email me or call us from time to time do benefit from the show.
I have to agree. Um, I think it's an awesome way to get connection and to reach out to folks. And not all seniors, you know, a podcast and through the radio such as that, you get a wide variety of listeners, I'm sure, you know. And of
Yes.
course, the younger folks who are wanting to learn this information, not just for themselves, but for their parents. And you said, you know, we were looking for, you know, maybe help for our parents. Well, you know, I'm becoming one of those parents, you know, needing a little extra help here and there. Um, but yeah, John, and so how far of a reach? Now, you and Preston do the show, and you might have mentioned it, but Preston's not actually in Oregon. Where is he?
He's actually in Arizona,
Yes,
in the Phoenix area.
right, right.
So, yeah, that was one of those things that we knew each other, and he had started a similar show in Arizona with a couple of colleagues there, and he offered to help me get going. And here we are 4 years later and 200 episodes, and we're still doing it, even though the other show in Arizona has shut down at this point.
Wow, only 4 years. I thought you'd been doing this longer.
You
So,
know, sometimes it feels like I started yesterday, and other times it seems like it's, 7, 8, 9 years.
right. I might have been one of your first ones then.
Very possible.
Yeah.
You're pretty
Or
early.
the first year anyway,
Yes.
because I think I've done it 3 times now.
Yes, I
This
think
was my
that's right.
third time, but it has only been in the last, well, I've been here 8 years now. So, wow, time flies when you're having fun.
It's a lot of fun for me to do. And from my own benefit, I thought I knew a lot about resources for seniors and various things in the industry, but I've learned so much doing the show that I would say 4 years later, what I knew 4 years ago was almost nothing.
Well, and I agree because of your podcast and because of you and your business, you're a great resource for connecting people also of straight across the board on all these different topics and you know, information sharing and resources. And I know, you know, you send out a lot of things for me to your contacts, which is really awesome. You know, you're one of my people that can connect others to our events, or you know, I share events that are going on with other groups, the Alzheimer's Association or Willamette Valley Hospice. You know, few groups have some Northwest Senior Services also. They're all having these different Zoom symposiums or conferences, and it's nice to be able to share that information with everybody outside your community. With the Zoom capabilities, you can reach people all over the place now. We have one of our members, I'm surprised she's not on today, moved to Hawaii, and she comes on the Zoom groups just to connect with our people here and, you know, say hi. And that's truly what it's about, you know, connecting with people where they're at. And right now, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want to look at it, people are staying at home. So
Right.
these types of outreach really can hit home. You know, it can really make a difference for people. That is definitely the wave of the future, you know, and we see it more and more as our population's aging out. Maybe they don't want to learn it, maybe they're not able to learn, but as they age out, it won't become an issue because the new generations coming up will have grown up with this. They'll have been instilled in them from the moment my granddaughter's a second grader, you know, online classes right now. She's learning more about computers and Zoom than I am. So, and she's 7, you know, I mean, we're seeing a lot of changes right now. What kind of changes are you seeing?
Well, so my main business is a home care agency.
Mhm.
Uh, so there's home care and then there's home health. And the main difference is home health is typically a short duration thing that is requested by your doctor. It's typically after a hospitalization or maybe a rehab stint in skilled nursing. But then home care, what we do is more of the everyday, day-to-day taking care of someone in their home who needs some assistance. So that could be housekeeping, fixing meals, running errands, but also personal care like bathing and various hygiene issues. Um, we are licensed to where we can help with medications. And there's also something called delegated tasks that we're licensed to do. Not all agencies are licensed for that. And what that means, and my most common example is an insulin shot. And what that means is the registered nurse has to come out and train the caregiver on how to do the insulin shot and then observe them doing it. And then they have to sign off on some documentation that the caregiver was competent to do it when the nurse is not there. These can be a little bit challenging at times because the delegations are per client. So even if the caregiver does a shot for someone else, they still have to get delegated for client number two. And of course, from a business owner point of view, they can be challenging because if somebody quits or moves on, then you've got to go to the effort to do those things again. Our specialty is actually dementia care. And we do a lot of training with our caregivers on dementia, and we also do training in the community. About 3 years ago, we did training for first responders in Kaiser and Salem. So that's EMTs, firefighters, and police officers. And in the case of Salem Police, we also trained their administrative staff. So those people that answer the non-emergency phone at least have some idea about dementia now. And I know we've heard back primarily from the EMTs on how much difference that's made in doing their job when they do show up and it's somebody with dementia who, unfortunately, oftentimes are not understood, but now they have a couple of tools to try to deal with that, to calm a person down or get them to cooperate in some fashion. I spent a lot of years watching my mother volunteer with seniors, and I came to a crossroads in my life a few years ago. The job I had was good, paid well, good benefits and everything, but it just didn't do it for me anymore. And so I made a change, and some of my friends are still going, I don't understand why you made such a drastic change, but now I feel like I'm doing something I can put my heart and soul into, provide care for people like I was helping my mother with the couple of years before I started my business. And while it's challenging at times, and especially with COVID and everything, every time I start to get frustrated, that's when we get the phone call or the card or something where a family is sharing, what a difference in their life we've made. And, it makes everything that is frustrating okay. Just all of a sudden those frustrations are gone, and it's another day to smile and be glad that we're here to help people. And when I was trying to help my mother, one of the things that frustrated me was terminology. I can Google anything if I know the right keywords to type in. Back then, I didn't. But I was convinced I wanted to be a resource to people. So even if they call my office and want to know, do you sell wheelchairs? Well, the answer is no, but I can give them 2 or 3 places to call here locally that do sell a wheelchair. Things like that. And, a lot of people call and ask, can I build a ramp for their dad to get in the front door or something? Well, yeah, I probably could, but the answer is no, because, I'll refer them to AmRamp or somebody like that who can come in and do it. And also I have enough knowledge about those businesses and how they operate that I can explain, well, if you go with one of these aluminum ramps, it goes right over your existing stairs. You don't have to tear them out or really modify your home. You can buy it or you can rent it. And even if you buy it, if 5 years down the road, your loved one passes away or something and you don't want it there anymore, he'll come pick it up and take it away. no charge. So knowing a lot of the folks that are guests on the radio show, as well as, through different networking in the community and stuff, it's always nice to be able to point people in the right direction if we're not the right service for their needs.
That's awesome, John. We also have a resource guide that's on our website. We just did the 14th revision. Rose Hope, our safety coordinator, she was on just last week. She was my lunch guest because I think it's one of our best secrets, our best hidden treasure. It's this resource guide that anybody can access, but most people don't. They don't think about it. And so she has it set up beautifully. You can go pull it up on the website. You can go to the page, click on it, it takes you right to the page. You can click on a website, it takes you right to the website. And we list people who we work with, who are partners. I believe ComForCare is in our guide, and we use that a lot. That is our basis for our resources. We've done a couple of resource fairs to get more information, but during all of these wild times we're in right now, we found that we still need more caregivers and transportation, folks for driving people. Those are the two biggest ones right now that we see. I totally understand though being a resource and referral. It's a good feeling to be able to give people information they need and help when they need it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've noticed you started doing, John, also is beyond your podcast, you're putting out a hard copy or on the computer, an actual newsletter. And it's not
Yes.
a real long one, but so what made you decide to do something like that?
Well, a lot of it was with COVID where I can't go out and do traditional marketing for my business. I get a lot of email every day with people trying to use email for traditional marketing.
Right.
And even though I could do that, those other ones kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth. So I decided I would do something a little different. I would do a newsletter that, had fun stuff,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of educational stuff, and, some motivational type or inspirational type messages as well. So that, hopefully it's useful for people when they do read it. I figure either they get a takeaway of something they can use in their life, or hopefully they just got a chuckle when they read it,
Laughter is a very important thing.
It's the best medicine.
Yeah, it is. Yep. What else can you tell us about, John?
Well, you did mention caregivers.
Yeah.
So especially now during the times of COVID and stuff, my agency and every one of my competitors here in the mid-Willamette Valley, we are struggling to get and keep caregivers. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who were working as caregivers, during the day when their children were in school, oh. Well, once school shut down and everything, they've stopped working, and most of them have not come back. And every single day, we get 20 or 30 calls of people looking for help. Collectively, a lot of my competitors and I will call back and forth to figure out today who can staff this person, or if nobody can, whose best estimate of when they might be able to, so that we have some kind of answer for the folks. Because for me, getting into this business, telling people I can't help you is the hardest thing I had to learn how to do. And I still almost refuse to do it. If I can find a different resource for them, I will. Whether that's sending them over to Northwest Seniors and Disabilities or to one of my direct competitors, I'm going to do that because I want to get them the help that they're looking for.
That's very nice customer service, providing a resource for them that they need versus what, should be marketed to them, looking
right.
at that, that's really honest and fair, John. That's awesome.
There's been a couple of times I've went to people's homes and I see a couple of my competitors' brochures and business cards sitting on the table, and I don't do a lot of marketing. Depending on whose cards they are, of course, but if they're the ones I work with on a regular basis, I usually tell the people, okay, you've already talked to two good ones. You
Yep.
won't go wrong with them. What questions can I answer that you might have for me, especially if our differentiator is dementia care, and if that's not what they're looking for, at the end of the day, in a nutshell, we all do personal care, we all do light housekeeping, meal prep, companion care, that kind of stuff. But what other questions do you have that maybe they didn't answer in general about home care that I can answer? And then I try to leave them some information on other resources they might need. And sometimes, people are so shocked by that approach that I get the business instead of the competitors. But even if I don't, if I was helpful while I was there by, leaving a flyer with other resources and stuff, then, I've done my good deed for the day.
It's all about that outreach and
Yes.
connecting with people. And even if they don't need the information now, who's to say they're not going to need it tomorrow or in the future?
Well, and I've had people who call and they go, oh, I suppose you don't remember a client you had a few years ago by the name of, XYZ. Most of the time I do, or at least I recognize the name, even if I don't recall the individual at the moment.
Mhm.
But they've heard from that family, how well we helped, several years ago. It really is a very small world when people talk like that. And again, I've had a few of them who they still had my business card. They didn't use my business, but when one of their friends needed help, they were like, "Oh, call this guy. He was helpful even though we didn't use him."
That's really good. That's really good word of mouth advertising.
Hey, John, I wanted to ask you, I know as we're in the COVID era, people are somewhat reticent about having someone in their home, especially with the virus and everything. Can you talk a little bit about what your caregivers and what your team are doing as far as PPE when you're going to go visit a client in their home?
I'll start with when people first call. We have that phone screening, if you will. And then oftentimes we'll set up conference calls so other family members can be on, or a Zoom if they have that capability, or I've FaceTimed with people that way to discuss the issues and that kind of thing. And we're doing a lot more paperwork, if you will, electronically, or even by old-fashioned mail if that's what needs to be done, so that maybe the normal person that would come and talk to them is doing it by Zoom, but not coming into the home. But then when a nurse or a caregiver does come, they have PPE. They have gowns, gloves, masks, face shields if needed. And those are used while they're working in the home with the individual. In addition to that, we're having staff do daily temperature checks and answer questionnaires every day before they go to a shift for us to try to keep track of, is anybody showing any symptoms or anything that might be COVID related. Obviously, if they stay home for a day or two and then any symptom they had is gone, it probably is not COVID, but we still try to do the best that we can for screening. And occasionally a caregiver will come or call us and say, well, a friend that I saw for 5 minutes last week, their spouse or somebody is now tested positive for it. So then we immediately send them for a COVID test just to be safe, even though oftentimes the way they describe the encounter is probably pretty low chance of actually catching COVID, but
Right.
it's better safe than sorry.
Well, and I was thinking about your dementia clients. I just wondered if you were training your team how to calm a client down or at least reassure them. Someone coming into your home with a mask can be a little disturbing sometimes.
In the case of somebody who maybe they were already dealing with this individual before COVID, often what has happened is they try to make a game out of it. They'll draw a funny face on their mask, then they'll draw a funny face on another mask and give it to the person with dementia. And, while some days that doesn't work, other days, kind of that inner child coming out and kind of going into play mode. And once you get that going and have that relationship, then what I've heard happening the most is every time they turn to look at the caregiver and they, see like this big lipstick face on there or whatever it is, they typically laugh. And so then they're still able to get them to cooperate with eating or taking their medicine or, whatever the task might be. But the other thing is, we try to get the family to help when they can. And we also use music a fair amount. If they can come in and maybe not let them focus on the person with the mask, but, music is playing and kind of sets the mood and stuff. Just unfortunately, what worked today may not work tomorrow. So you have to kind of keep going back to the drawing board to figure out what's going to work with this person until they're used to seeing you every day with a mask and it doesn't seem weird to them.
So as your caregivers go into the home and they're working with the client, what about the family members, or if they're family members, do they must test them also? Do you take like the thermometer gun out with them and they test the family too?
We do. We have some families that want to use their own.
Okay.
And we've had a few who refuse to cooperate with those, but they have accepted that they need to wear a mask while the caregiver's in the home and stuff like that. So we try to work with people. We don't try to impose a lot on them. But we've had a few who, like the spouse or somebody, doesn't want to wear a mask and they start having, might be just a cold, but they're okay, they have a bit of a temperature and they have this and they have that. And so there's been a few times where until that person gets tested, we won't go back.
That's only fair. You don't want to put your folks in jeopardy either.
Right.
Have you had any of your clients or any of your staff become sick with COVID? I mean, has it actually directly touched you guys?
We did have one caregiver back in March who tested positive for COVID. He sat out for 14 days. And he let us know that he was possibly exposed, and it happened on a 2 or 3 day period where he wasn't working, and we kind of scrambled to get his shifts covered. But his test did come back positive, but then after sitting out an additional 14 days, he no longer tested positive. But even then, my nurse was a little skeptical on the COVID tests. I think she still is. And so when he did return to work, he was basically in a hazmat suit, kind of set up with mask
Right.
and shield and all of that. And she told him, I know you wipe things down and everything, but I want you to do it double, and we never had any problems with that. And we've had a couple of clients call us and tell us they've tested positive and so not to come. And then any caregivers that have been there for the last week or two, we send them for testing. But other than that, we've only just recently had one client call and say they tested positive, and they'd just gotten a rapid test that day. And unfortunately, when they called to tell us, there was a caregiver there.
Oh,
But the scheduler and the nurse share an office here, and she basically handed the phone to the nurse and let her talk to the person who left the shift and went directly to get COVID tested. The most frustrating thing for me is the well-meaning primary care physicians who just say, oh, we'll just quarantine at home for 14 days or whatever. And call us back in a week if things aren't better or whatever. And it's like, no, they're a caregiver.
yep.
This leads, and in some cases they see 2 or 3 different people during the week. So we need to get them tested because we may have to backtrace and notify other people. But my nurse has headed most of that off. If she knows she's sending somebody to Salem Clinic, for example, she will call them and tell them that they're coming, and she'll even fax over a letter that explains why the doctor needs to have them tested. And that seems to be working pretty well now.
So would that be the rapid test you're referring to?
Yes, although not every clinic has the rapid test at this point, but, and so we have some caregivers that are down around Corvallis and Albany and stuff, and if the rapid test isn't immediately available to them, then we'll have them get a regular test that takes about 4 or 5 days to come back. And in the meantime, they have to sit on the bench and wait.
Have you actually lost clients or caregivers because they don't want to put themselves in those positions?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, when schools first shut down and COVID was blasting across the news channels and stuff, we had about 25% of our clients put us on hold. And I don't know, there were 5 or 6 that were in the pipeline to start services soon, you know, within a couple weeks or something, and they all put us on hold. Normally, that would be a big issue, and you'd be trying to scramble to fill those slots so caregivers are working. But at that same time, a lot of caregivers who had school-age children now were, oh, I got to be at home. You know, some of them have come back to us, maybe not as much as they worked before, but maybe they're just working weekends now or something like that. But yes, we have lost business as well as employees due to COVID.
Well, John, and did we ask how many employees do you actually have?
About 80.
Awesome. And how many clients do you guys have?
That's about 110 or 115.
That's awesome. And how far does your region go?
Basically, our territory
That's
goes from Woodburn down to Sweet Home, and then the width of the valley pretty much. Now, most of our business is around Salem, some in Silverton, Staten, a little bit in Albany, and a fair amount in Corvallis. You start getting out to Sweet Home or you know, Sheridan or something like that, it gets a lot harder to staff it because oftentimes those folks may not be private pay, they may be Medicaid or something. And so then being able to pay the caregiver for drive time and stuff is, you know, out of the business pocket. It's not covered out of the revenue from the client. So the further out areas can be tougher to staff, but you know, Salem we do pretty well, and same with Albany and Corvallis.
That's quite a vast territory. I didn't realize that. So when you say you include down like towards Corvallis, you mean down that way, do you have another office down there, or does everybody coordinate through you here in Salem?
Most of the coordination comes through Salem, but we do have a small satellite office in Corvallis. It's actually inside an independent living building,
Cool.
which does confuse people at times if they want to come meet at the office.
Well, John, tell us something fun, something personal about you. Just give us a little snapshot on John Hughes, the man.
I'm married. I have 2 sons and 3 stepchildren and about 13 grandkids.
Oh,
So yeah, even with COVID and phone calls and Zoom and everything else, it still is quite busy. You know, live in the country, so on several acres. So the blackberries always keep me busy because they never stop growing, it seems. And but you know, we have a few farm animals, and when weather cooperates, I like to go out and ride my Harley.
John, this has been fabulous talking with you today. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for joining us with Dodie today.